It's pretty wild to think that life's greatest innovation was also its deadliest poison. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into how a single invention, just one, kicked off the most massive environmental crisis our planet has ever seen. Okay, so if I asked you right now, what was the deadliest pollutant in Earth's history, what would you say? Probably something like carbon dioxide, right? Or maybe methane. But the real answer? It's something way more surprising. It's the very thing you and I are breathing to stay alive. It's oxygen. So how on earth could the gas of life be a deadly poison? Well, to get our heads around that, we need to take a trip. We're going way back, more than 2.5 billion years, to a planet that would feel completely alien to us. Okay, I want you to picture this. The sky isn't blue. It's this hazy methane-rich orange. The oceans? They're not blue either. They're kind of an olive green, just full of dissolved iron. And the life here? Well, it's all what we call anaerobes. For them, oxygen wasn't just useless, it was a straight-up poison. See, their entire metabolism, the very way they got energy, was built on these super fragile chemical structures, things like iron-sulfur clusters, and one whiff of oxygen would just obliterate them. This world, this anoxic world, was their paradise. So, the fuse for this global catastrophe, it wasn't some giant asteroid or a massive volcano. Nope, it was lit by a single tiny microbe that came up with a revolutionary new invention. So about 3.5 billion years ago, these little guys called cyanobacteria figured out an amazing new trick. They learned how to use sunlight to split water molecules to get energy. I mean, what a game changer. It was super efficient and gave them a huge leg up. But there was a catch. This whole process created a waste product. And that waste was a highly reactive gas that the planet had never really seen before in any serious amount: free oxygen. But here's where it gets kind of weird. For over 1 billion years after they invented this, almost nothing happened. The oxygen just didn't build up. Why? Well, because the planet itself was basically fighting back. Yeah, for hundreds of millions of years, the Earth acted like a giant set of sponges. Think about it. All that dissolved iron in the oceans, it literally started to rust and sink to the bottom. That's what created the massive banded iron formations we can still see today. At the same time, you had minerals on land and gases like methane in the air just soaking up every last bit. The planet was absorbing every single molecule of oxygen these little cyanobacteria could pump out. And this timeline, wow, it really shows you the incredible scale of this delay. The oxygen faucet gets turned on 3.5 billion years ago, but it takes more than 1 billion years, 1 billion, for the planet's sponges to finally get full. And then, around 2.46 billion years ago, we hit the tipping point. The sponges were saturated. There was just nowhere left for all that oxygen to go. And once those sinks were full, that's when it all kicked off. What scientists call the Great Oxidation Event, though really a better name is the Oxygen Catastrophe, began. And it delivered this devastating 1-2 punch that would change the planet forever. Okay, so the first punch was just a biological holocaust. For all that anaerobic life that owned the planet, oxygen was a violent, brutal poison. It created these destructive little molecules, reactive oxygen species, that just tore apart their DNA and proteins. It directly poisoned the very core of their energy systems, those iron-sulfur clusters we talked about. And it wrecked the enzymes they needed to get food. I mean, we're talking about a mass extinction on a scale that's hard to even wrap your head around. It probably wiped out the vast majority of all life on Earth. And the second punch? A full-blown climate catastrophe. You see, that thick methane atmosphere had been like a nice, warm blanket for the planet. But as oxygen flooded the air, it chewed up that methane, destroying this really potent greenhouse gas. The planet's blanket was ripped away. Global temperatures plummeted, triggering the very first snowball Earth event, a deep freeze so intense it might have covered the entire globe in ice for millions of years. And you gotta understand, this wasn't like flipping a switch. The geological record shows this whole period was just wild, chaotic, and unstable. For millions of years, oxygen levels were on a roller coaster. They'd shoot way up, causing all this havoc, and then they'd crash back down. It's like the entire planet was just struggling to figure out its new normal. So now the world is toxic, and it's frozen. It's a pretty grim picture. For the few organisms that actually survived this apocalypse, there was really only one path forward. They had to do the unthinkable. They had to figure out a way to embrace the poison. But the reward for taking that gamble? It was huge, absolutely immense. By evolving ways to not just put up with oxygen, but to actually use it, in a process we call aerobic respiration, life unlocked a staggering amount of energy. Just look at this. Anaerobic life might get, say, 2 units of energy from a sugar molecule. But aerobic life? It could get up to 38. That is nearly a 20 times increase in power, a total game changer. And this whole energy revolution was made possible by one of the most incredible team-ups in the history of life. Here's what happened. A larger cell swallowed a smaller bacterium that had already figured out how to use oxygen. But instead of just digesting it, it made a deal. They formed a partnership. And that tiny bacterium eventually became the mitochondrion, the powerhouse that's inside almost all of your cells right now. It's the part of you that turns that once deadly poison into the fuel that keeps you going.
So this catastrophe, it completely rewrote the rulebook for life on Earth. But the new world that it created, it was a long, long way from being an instant paradise.
In fact, the sheer scale of the chaos basically left the planet exhausted. After all that fire and ice, Earth just kind of fell into this billion-year-long slump. All the massive upheavals had used up key nutrients, and the oxygen levels were still too low and unstable for evolution to really take any big next steps. It's like life slammed on the brakes. And this long, quiet period, scientists actually call it the boring billion. So why does any of this matter to us today? Well, here's the bottom line. That huge energy boost from using oxygen, it was the absolute requirement for any complex life to exist, period. Without it, you don't get large cells, you don't get animals made of many cells, and you certainly don't get creatures like us. Our very existence is owed to the fallout from the planet's greatest mass extinction, an extinction caused by life itself. The whole story is just wrapped up in this amazing paradox, isn't it? The single most devastating pollution event in our planet's history was also the critical step needed to create, well, everything complex we see today. All the beauty, all the diversity. Our world was literally born from a catastrophe. And that leaves us with one last, kind of mind-blowing thought. This entire planetary overhaul, we're talking changing the chemistry of the oceans, the makeup of the atmosphere, the climate of the entire globe, all of it was driven by tiny microscopic organisms. It's just a profound reminder of the immense world-shaping power that even the smallest forms of life can have.